Welcome to the debate. So, in the National Football League, there's this universally accepted cheat code for winning a championship, right? You draft a superstar quarterback, and while he is still on his super inexpensive rookie contract, you essentially spend every available dollar to build a super team around him.
Right. You push all the chips to the center of the table.
Exactly. But what happens when a franchise secures that highly coveted quarterback yet flat out refuses to use the cheat code? Today, we are examining the intense strategic crossroads facing the 2026 Washington Commanders.
And it is a fascinating crossroads, honestly.
It really is. Following a completely disastrous 2025 campaign, one that was heavily derailed by injuries and resulted in a pretty bleak 5-12 record, this franchise is under microscopic scrutiny regarding its roster-building philosophy.
And rightly so, because, the clock is ticking louder every single day in Washington.
The central question we are exploring today is exactly how an NFL franchise must navigate this rookie quarterback window. Specifically, should a front office maintain strict, cap-responsible patience and prioritize internal development, or must they aggressively acquire external veteran talent to capitalize on their quarterback's cheapest years? I will be arguing that sustainable NFL success requires disciplined internal roster development and front office synergy under General Manager Adam Peters.
And I'll be arguing that extreme patience in this specific context is a dangerous liability. It's a strategy that squanders Jayden Daniels' incredibly valuable rookie contract window and, frankly, actively repels veteran talent from even wanting to play in Washington.
Okay, so let's start by looking at the underlying math of the league, because that dictates literally everything Adam Peters is doing right now. When you have a talent like Jayden Daniels on a rookie deal making roughly $9 million a year, you are essentially generating $30 to $40 million of artificial salary cap space.
Compared to a team paying a veteran, yeah.
Right, compared to paying a guy like Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow. Now, the conventional wisdom says you immediately take that surplus and go on a shopping spree in free agency. But I believe Peters is completely justified in refusing to panic buy after a 5-12 season.
Refusing to panic buy or just refusing to participate?
Well, he understands that a season derailed by catastrophic injuries inherently proves you cannot simply buy a championship. You have to build a robust, sustainable core that survives attrition. Panic buying veterans right now is essentially putting your franchise on a high-interest credit card.
See, I look at that exact same math and come to the exact opposite conclusion. You just admitted they are sitting on $30 to $40 million of artificial cap space. That surplus is your championship margin.
But it doesn't mean you just blow it all at once.
To not spend it, to just sit on your hands and preach patience, is effectively roster negligence. You possess the single most valuable asset in professional sports, but that asset has an expiration date. In 3 years, Jayden Daniels is going to demand a contract that consumes 25% of your total salary cap.
Which is why you need a sustainable foundation.
The window to build a complete roster around him without sacrificing depth is right now. And frankly, we are already seeing glaring red flags that this passive approach is backfiring. You're losing highly experienced evaluators in the front office, and you have veteran players openly regretting signing with the team.
Okay, I know fans listening to this right now are probably screaming at their dashboards. We have the cap space, just go sign somebody. But you cannot separate the financial strategy from the organizational structure.
How so?
To build a sustainable core, you need absolute synergy in the building. And that explains the front office turnover we just witnessed. Let's look at the exit of Scott Fitterer to the agency Athletes First and the hiring of Demetrius Washington as the new senior personnel executive.
Right. A huge downgrade.
I completely disagree. Fitterer is a respected name, yes. But we have to be honest about how he evaluates risk. He oversaw a dismal 14-37 run as the Panthers' general manager. Replacing him with Demetrius Washington is an upgrade because of operational alignment.
Operational alignment?
Yes. Washington and Adam Peters worked together in the San Francisco 49ers front office for 5 years. They speak the exact same scouting language.
Okay, I have to stop you there, because waving away almost 30 years of NFL experience just to justify hiring a former colleague isn't alignment, it's building an echo chamber.
It's not an echo chamber, it's
You cannot just erase Scott Fitterer's resume. He began as a scout with the Giants back in 1998. He climbed the ladder in Seattle and was their director of college scouting when they built the Legion of Boom and won the Super Bowl in 2013. He knows structurally what a championship roster looks like from the ground up.
I'm not denying his resume.
He engineered the massive trade that sent Christian McCaffrey to the 49ers, for crying out loud. And let's look at the man Adam Peters just replaced him with. Demetrius Washington was quite literally just fired by the Minnesota Vikings this past January alongside Kwesi Adofo-Mensah.
Well, being part of a regime change in Minnesota doesn't invalidate Washington's 5 years of successful collaboration with Peters in San Francisco. You're focusing entirely on the resume, while I'm focusing on the daily mechanics of running a draft room.
The mechanics matter, sure, but
Think about how a front office actually functions. When you are trying to implement a specific scouting grading scale, like, say, strict thresholds for a player's relative athletic score, you cannot have fundamental disagreements at the executive level about what constitutes a viable draft pick.
right, but you need some pushback.
But look at Fitterer's tenure in Carolina, specifically giving up massive draft capital for an undersized quarterback in Bryce Young. That shows a fundamentally different risk profile than what Adam Peters utilizes. Demetrius Washington understands the exact athletic and psychological parameters Peters values. When the GM and the senior personnel executive evaluate a player, they aren't wasting 3As arguing over differing philosophies. That synergy accelerates decision-making.
I hear you, but accelerating decision-making only benefits the franchise if the decisions are actually correct. Moving fast in the wrong direction just means you hit the wall quicker.
I don't think they're moving in the wrong direction.
Look at where Fitterer went, though. He moved to Athletes First, which is arguably the most powerful talent agency in the sport. That move alone demonstrates his immense relational capital across the league. He knows the agents, he knows the cap guys, he knows how the market breathes.
Sure, he's well connected.
When you lose an executive with that kind of sprawling network and replace him with a fired assistant GM from Minnesota, you are narrowing your organizational worldview. And you are doing it at the exact moment you should be expanding it to maximize Jayden Daniels' window. You need executives who will challenge Adam Peters, not just nod along because they share the same scouting shorthand.
But wide organizational worldview doesn't put points on the board if the front office is paralyzed by competing philosophies, though. If the GM wants to build through the draft and the senior executive is constantly pushing to trade first-round picks for aging veterans, the organization stalls. And this front office philosophy, this insistence on perfect alignment and strict value grading, it doesn't just exist in a vacuum on the executive floor. It trickles down to the grass.
You see exactly how this manifests when we look at the current logjam at the wide receiver 2 position behind Terry McLaurin.
Oh, we absolutely need to talk about the wide receivers because this is where the philosophy completely falls apart.
I disagree. I think it shows remarkable discipline. Adam Peters is entering training camp with a wide-open competition for that WR2 spot rather than overpaying a free agent. This is the absolute hallmark of a cap-responsible GM. Leaving a massive hole on the roster is responsible?
It's not a hole. You have a healthy Traylon Burks who desperately needs a full offseason immersed in offensive coordinator David Blau's playbook. You have De'Ami Brown, who is fighting to reclaim his draft value. You have Luke McCaffrey entering a crucial stage of his development. Allowing these guys to actually fight for the role is simply smarter business.
I mean,
why spend $15 million on a veteran who might decline when you can develop a younger, cheaper player? Furthermore, if they need to lean on a tight end like Chigo Okonkwo to be the de facto second option in the passing game, that is a creative, schematic solution that preserves your salary cap for future contract extensions.
I'm sorry, but that is a terrifying way to build an offense. Waiting until July training camp to find a legitimate second receiver tests patience to the point of absurdity. You are leaving David Blau with a collection of maybes, what-ifs, and slot receivers.
They're young players with upside.
Think about the actual X's and O's here. We are talking about maximizing a generational quarterback talent. By failing to secure a proven perimeter threat opposite McLaurin, you are functionally handing opposing defensive coordinators the exact blueprint to beat you.
By leaning on the run game?
No, by bracketing Terry McLaurin. If you don't have a proven WR2, defenses are just going to play cover 2 man, roll a safety over the top of McLaurin on every single vital third down, and force your unproven collection of slot guys to beat man coverage on the outside.
Well, if this scheme...
You cannot ask a tight end or an unproven third-year receiver to consistently defeat single coverage against elite NFL cornerbacks. If Treylon Burks doesn't magically figure it out, the entire passing scheme collapses.
Is it buying a veteran wide receiver right now, akin to buying a house at the peak of a seller's market, though? Signing a massive veteran receiver contract right now isn't just buying an expensive asset. It's putting that asset on an adjustable rate mortgage.
But you have the money to pay the mortgage.
The remaining free agents on the market are either vastly overpriced or carry significant injury baggage. If you sign one of them and they tear a hamstring in week 2, you aren't just hurting your 2026 season. The guaranteed money and dead cap hits mean you are actively sabotaging your 2028 roster, too.
That's a huge if.
If the internal options fail to emerge during camp, doesn't keeping your cap space dry allow the front office to make a highly targeted trade deadline move in October? You keep your flexibility rather than being anchored to a desperate summer signing.
The fundamental flaw with the dry powder theory is that by October, your season might already be over. We literally just watched this happen in 2025.
Injuries ended 2025, not cap space.
You wait for the trade deadline, but by the time you realize Treylon Burks isn't creating separation off the line of scrimmage, or Dyami Brown hasn't taken that necessary developmental step, Jayden Daniels has spent 6 weeks getting battered in the pocket because he has to hold on to the football for an extra half second, waiting for someone to get open.
Blau's scheme is designed to get the ball out quickly, though.
You can't get the ball out quickly if nobody is open. And let's not pretend the NFL trade deadline is some magical supermarket where premium receivers are sitting on the discount rack.
Well, no, but...
The asking price for a true difference maker in October is exorbitant. It's usually a first or second round pick. By leaning on internal competition among players who have historically failed to separate themselves on a depth chart, you are gambling Daniels' health and his mechanical development on a best-case scenario.
I understand the concern for Daniels' physical toll. Nobody wants to see their franchise quarterback taking unnecessary hits. But over-leveraging the future for a marginal upgrade today is exactly how franchises trap themselves in mediocrity.
It's not a marginal upgrade to get a true WR2.
Look at the successful models in this league, the teams that sustain contention for a decade. They identify and develop internal talent. They do not force external acquisitions when the market value doesn't match the player's actual on-field value. They are giving Burks and McCaffrey an open runway. If even one of them seizes it, you suddenly have a highly cost-effective weapon.
Yeah, if.
That is the entire point of capitalizing on the rookie QB window. You pair the cheap quarterback with other cost-controlled assets so you can pay your elite offensive linemen and pass rushers.
No, you pair the cheap quarterback with elite veteran talent precisely because you have the financial room to absorb their contracts. And the cultural cost of this penny pinching is already becoming a massive public relations problem. Look at what is happening with Von Miller.
The podcast comments.
Yes. His recent comments on Steve Smith's 89 podcast are the ultimate indictment of Adam Peters' hyper-patient philosophy.
Let's provide the actual context for that before we blow it out of proportion.
The context is that a future Hall of Famer went on a highly popular podcast and openly stated that choosing the Commanders over the Seattle Seahawks in 2025 was the wrong decision. He told Steve Smith it was a coin flip for him in free agency, and he chose Washington because he believed Jayden Daniels was poised for an MVP-caliber season.
Right, he pointed to their rookie run.
Exactly. But what happened? Washington went 5-12, heavily due to a lack of structural depth when Daniels got hurt. Meanwhile, the team Miller turned down, Seattle, went on to win the Super Bowl. When a veteran of that caliber publicly regrets signing with your franchise because the infrastructure failed, it sends a shockwave through the league.
I really think you're overstating the impact of one podcast quote.
I am absolutely not. Agents listen to this, man. Other players listen to this. It tells future free agents that Washington is not a serious, robust destination. It proves that a championship window is incredibly fragile. You have to build a veteran-laden roster around Daniels, or you will waste this opportunity entirely and alienate the locker room in the process.
Okay, look, I'll grant you that Von Miller's comments are a PR headache. It's never a good news day when a legendary player publicly trashes your team's infrastructure. But if we look past the emotion of the quote and examine the mechanics of what actually happened, I arrive at the exact opposite conclusion. I believe Miller's situation proves the fundamental merit of Peters' financial patience.
How can a player saying, obviously I picked the wrong team, prove that your GM is doing a good job? That makes no sense.
Because you have to look at the cause and effect. Miller signed because he believed in the upside of the quarterback. But then what happened? Injuries. Unprecedented, catastrophic injuries hit Jayden Daniels, and they decimated the roster across multiple position groups.
Which happens in football.
Right, and as Miller himself admitted on that very same podcast, those are variables you just cannot calculate. Now, play out your preferred scenario for a second. Imagine if Adam Peters had abandoned his discipline philosophy in the spring of 2025. Imagine if he had aggressively over-leveraged the salary cap to surround Von Miller with 3 or 4 other highly expensive, aging veterans desperately trying to force a Super Bowl run.
With better depth, they probably win more than 5 games. Maybe they stay in the playoff hunt. Or the injuries still happen exactly as they did because you cannot outspend the injury bug. A torn ACL doesn't care how much guaranteed money is on your cap sheet.
Well, sure, but
If Peters had spent that $30 million in surplus cap space and the team still suffered those injuries, that 5-12 season wouldn't just be a disappointing anomaly, it would be a franchise-altering catastrophe. They would be trapped in cap hell right now.
I think you're being overly dramatic.
They would be completely unable to extend their young core players, anchored to aging, injured veterans on a team that didn't win anyway. The disciplined, patient approach is exactly what allows them to pivot and recover from a 5-12 season without being sent back to the dark ages of a complete tear-down rebuild. But you can't build a professional football roster operating out of the fear of injury if your entire baseline assumption is, well, our quarterback might get hurt, so we better keep our cap clean for 2028. You are operating with a loser's mentality. You are admitting defeat before the season even kicks off.
It is not a loser's mentality. It is objective risk management.
Risk management is protecting your quarterback by surrounding him with receivers who get open immediately. Risk management is having a defense robust enough to keep the offense off the field so your young quarterback doesn't have to play hero ball on 3rd and long and expose himself to blindside hits.
We both want to protect Daniels.
Von Miller wanted to be part of a robust, self-sustaining machine. Seattle had that machine. They had the veteran depth. When injuries inevitably happened in Seattle last year, they had veteran fail-safes ready to step in. Washington didn't. They had a collection of draft picks and cap space doesn't make tackles.
No, it doesn't.
If you want to maximize the Jayden Daniels era, you cannot have a reputation as a front office that relies on luck and internal development while the elite teams are out there aggressively plugging their holes.
Look, it is a delicate balance, undoubtedly. The line between patience and passivity is thin. But as we look at the totality of the situation, I maintain that the Commanders are fundamentally on the correct path.
We will have to agree to disagree there.
Rebuilding the structural integrity of a franchise after a 5-12 season requires ironclad discipline. It requires the foresight to build a unified front office with hires like Demetrius Washington, ensuring that from the scouting trail to the GM's desk, everyone is evaluating risk through the exact same analytical lens.
Even if it creates an echo chamber.
And it requires the stomach to let players like Treylon Burks and Luke McCaffrey actually compete for the WR2 role, retaining the financial flexibility to adjust intelligently in October rather than desperately in March.
And I maintain that this extreme patience is just a massive, unjustifiable gamble with the most precious timeline in sports. Failing to definitively solve the perimeter weapons heading into training camp is a direct disservice to David Blowe's scheme and to Jayden Daniels' physical safety.
I hear your concerns.
Veterans like Von Miller express public regret are flashing warning signs that the culture is fraying. The financial advantage of a rookie quarterback contract is a fleeting phenomenon. Man, by the time this front office finishes patiently evaluating its internal assets, the window to win a championship may already be closed.
Regardless of our differing philosophies on asset allocation and salary cap mechanics, there is one undeniable point of convergence here. No roster philosophy, no matter how financially patient or aggressively constructed, survives a catastrophic quarterback injury.
Absolutely. That is the one universal truth in the modern NFL.
Jayden Daniels' health will ultimately dictate the success or failure of Adam Peters' tenure. You can build the perfect veteran infrastructure, or you can maintain the absolute perfect, pristine cap sheet. But if number 5 isn't taking snaps under center, the entire blueprint crumbles.
The margins are just razor thin. As training camp opens and the pads come on, we are going to see exactly how this specific group of players responds to the pressure of those expectations.
We will leave it to you, the listener, to decide whether steady, cap-responsible patience or aggressive external acquisition is the superior model for building a champion. When you hold the ultimate cheat code of a star quarterback on a rookie deal, do you keep your resources safely in the bank, or do you push all your chips to the center of the table before the window slams shut?
The league doesn't wait for anyone to make up their mind, that's for sure.
That it does not. Thank you for joining